And welcome into our live coverage of the State of the Union 2024. President Joe Biden, according to my knowledge, has just arrived at Congress. We are working to get a feed on the House chamber. Please stand by with me here. We are having some slight technical difficulties. We may have to go. President Biden is fixing to enter Congress, to my knowledge. Stand by. We do have a live feed on its way. Here we go. We should get live feed any moment now. Okay. Welcome in anyone tuning in for the State of the Union coverage. We do have live feed into Congress right now. We are listening in there. Live from the nation's capital. And apologies for that State of the Union address there. I'm trying to kind of figure things out and get you guys a live feed into the House. That is the feed that we have right now. I'm looking to get another feed possibly that we can find, and as we work to get that, President Biden's, according to my knowledge, President Biden's motorcade has arrived in Congress, or has arrived at the chambers, and at this point, we are awaiting for some type of, we are waiting again him to walk into Congress. You can see the cameras there everywhere, working to get another light feed into the Congress, as I was just saying. But something to point out is, and I know we're kind of coming on the air right as it's expected to start. The Supreme Court justices are in the room. The Supreme Court justices are in the room right now, and also, and there you take a look there at, you were just taking a look at Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, and Senate President and Vice President Kamala Harris. So as we bring in our coverage, we are awaiting the President's motorcade. As President Biden's motorcade has arrived at the Capitol, we are working to continue to get you guys live coverage. For anyone wondering who's talking in the background here, I am Jackson Mitchell here, and we are working to make sure you guys and everyone has a feed and their Republican address that is expected to come after this. Let's go back over to that feed again. President Biden's motorcade arriving at the Capitol as we bring in our live coverage. Something you're also going to notice is senators, and it's going to be congresswomen here, wearing white. And why you're seeing that is because the House Democratic Women's Caucus, it appears we may see the president here in just a second. We're going to stand by for that. I'm going to leave you on that feed here. The House Democratic Women's Caucus is wearing all pink tonight. I'm sorry, all white tonight. Correction. With fighting for reproductive freedom pens and fight to gain back reproductive rights. In a Republican House and a Democratic Senate, it's very hard to get anything passed, to fight anything bipartisan. So we are waiting the president. Again, the president's motorcade has arrived, but we are still waiting at this point for him to walk in. And I know that they did have to find some type of alternate route in the Capitol, as there were protesters. According to my knowledge, there were protesters talking on the Israel-Hamas war, and how Biden, and this has been something that's come up before, need to demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire in that area. So as you watch the House chambers there, we are again awaiting. Guys, I'm working to see if we have any other feeds coming from there, but at this point we do not. But we are again awaiting. And also, I'm learning that George Santos is also back. I'm learning that George Santos is also back in Congress. He was asked to move, according to my knowledge. He was sitting somewhere and was asked to move, and he did it politely, which to some was surprising. But we are again, and it appears we do now finally have another feed for you guys. Stand by on that. Stand by on that extra feed as you take a look at the House of Representatives. Should be able to get that feed to you guys. Hold up here. And here is that other feed we're talking about. We turn that down because the Supreme Court justices, including there you go, is that Justice Ketanji Brown there, moving to a bunch of different shots. Biden border crisis, stop the Biden border crisis, very good pin. There's Justice Ketanji Jackson, correction, and a bunch of the other justices. So that those are from the Supreme Court there that you're taking a look on your screen at, and we are going to continue with that. To follow live updates, please consider going to brooklynnews.wordpress.com, or in just a moment, you should be able to scan the QR code at the very top. Oh, yeah. At the very top of your screen, you should be able to see here in just a minute. Scan this for our live coverage as President Biden has arrived at the Capitol. And I apologize if that's really loud. It's also really loud on my side. We are waiting again for President Biden to enter Congress. And as we wait for that, we are just going to keep on this shot here as his motorcade has arrived, but he has not yet entered the House chamber. Okay, also something to note in this case, and I'm gonna be kind of talking about different things as we move on. I know I said earlier that the motorcade, and there you go. I can see Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton there. That's Arkansas Senator way back there is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. But something to note here. Apologies here. Okay, but we have some new people walking in here. Stand by with me. Stand by again. Just there we go. Who you're looking at right now, or we're looking at, just then shaking people's hands. We may see another shot coming from there in just a moment. The person who walked in there was the first gentleman, which is Kamala Harris's husband. I'm hearing that from NBC News is that his remarks have been placed on the table. Now, there are a few people that travel, and that is First Lady Jill Biden. I'm sorry. There we go. That is First Lady Jill Biden. She just passed first gentleman. There. want to make a correction here. Second gentleman, because that is the vice president's husband.
Mr.
Let's listen to Mike
Speaker,
Johnson.
the President's Cabinet.
Oh,
Mr. Speaker, the President's Cabinet.
this is President Biden's cabinet. You can see Secretary Blinken right there. You see Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense. When you take a closer look, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense, we have them all of the secretaries and the cabinet, Secretary Yellen. That's Secretary of Transportation way back there, I recognize. Secretary Pete Buttigieg. We're going to stay on this camera as you watch there. And we apologize. It appears we may have some type of lag going on. Let's go over to this camera again, the President's Cabinet. Just entering just a few moments ago, Secretary of Congress, Gina Raimondo. We are waiting here to see. All right. Secretary. Sorry, guys. I'm just listening in here to other news sources and then watching in what you guys are seeing on your screen. And I'm listening in here to CNN, and it appears the Secretary of Education, which is going to be Miguel Cardona, is going to be the one in the worst case necessary, or the worst case scenario, I should correct myself there, would take the power. That was something that CNN, I'm listening in here, I was trying to figure out. All right, so we can go back over here and listen in here, watch, and see what we kind of have going on in the chambers, the House chambers. I'm sorry, it appears we are struggling with a lag. I thought we had a shot there, but we had a shot of the House and how full it was. The House, at a time like this, with the State of the Union address, is full. Now, Biden has arrived at the Capitol again, and we are, the Secretary of Education is tonight's survivor. So that was something that you often try to figure out in a time like this. So there's First Lady Joe Biden. Let's go back to this camera just because we are having some trouble with some lag, and I'm trying to work on that, trying to fix that. I don't know exactly what's going on, but that's something interesting that we are going to continue watching. Here we are again awaiting President Biden's speech to Congress and America. This, and I want to talk something about the history. I want to talk something about the history of the State of the Union. Let's talk about that for just a moment. The State of the Union is an address held annually by each president of the U.S. dating back to the first President George Washington. The address is to Congress and Americans as it updates them on what's going on now and what the president wants and plans to do in the future. President Biden, this is his fourth speech here. The address is usually held in the early part of the new year. Now, the address is the president fulfilling duty of Article 2, Section 3, Clause 1 in the Constitution. So, regarding the Constitution, excuse me here, but basically, the writers of the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, everyone else, basically, they wanted to kind of have this kind of a presidential address to Congress. They kind of updates everyone, updates Americans, updates Congress on what exactly is going on and what he plans to do. It's kind of, a look at the future and a look at the past. What has he done? What does he plan to do in the future?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
And the president is in place right now. Let's go ahead and take a look here. I just saw the president in the background here. You can hear the claps. Let's go ahead and let's go over there. Okay, let's continue to kind of listen and hear. What you are seeing is the President Biden has just um, entered the House chambers to give the State of the Union address here, and we're going to stick with this shot here for just a moment. I noted something, and I heard something. I heard the Republican Congresswoman from Georgia. That's going to be Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said, "Thank you, Mr. President." If you remember the last State of the Union, anyone that tuned into that, she was the one screaming "liar" in the background. I think it was when they were started talking about, I know Medicare, Medicaid. They started talking something of that nature, and she started screaming "liar." You know, a bunch of different controversy there. Let's see if we can go back to this shot there. And there's still someone in the background following. Right down to the address president. Everyone on Capitol Hill. These still awake on that. So again, as we wait on him to and voting, he's taking a bunch of photos here. Some key things that the president may talk about and are going to talk about is going to be just a little bit his age, the border, and you can hear them chanting to make that out. They're saying 4 more years there. That's what you are hearing right now as President Biden continues his way up to the podium to give his State of the Union address to Capitol and Congresswomen. 4 more years is what you just heard. There you go. We are waiting here. Kind of feels weird when it gets super quiet. It's never this quiet in the house, unless no one's there. But right now, you're watching here. Greeting different people. You can see Nancy Pelosi, the House Marita, following behind. I think that was House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries there. Who kind of walked away in the background. You can see the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and Speaker Mike Johnson already ready after Podesta and is ready. Let's see if we can't go back to this meeting. President Biden. Peaceful. The President there of the United States walking up the podium.
Tony. Jill. Good evening. Good evening. If I were smart, I'd go home now. Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, members of Congress, my fellow Americans, in January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation, and he said, "I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that it needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now, my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable. America is a founding member of NATO, the military alliance of democratic nations created after World War II to prevent war and keep the peace. And today, we've made NATO stronger than ever. We welcomed Finland to the alliance last year. And just this morning, Sweden officially joined, and their minister is here tonight. We're going to stand up. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And they know how to fight. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to NATO, the strongest military alliance the world has ever seen. I say this to Congress, we have to stand up to Putin. Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down. In a literal sense, history is watching. History is watching. Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. America stood strong, and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win. As I've done ever since being elected to office, I ask all of you without regard to party to join together and defend democracy. Remember your oath of office of defending against all threats, foreign and domestic. Respect free and fair elections, restore trust in our institutions, and make clear political violence has absolutely no place in America, zero place. Again, it's not hyperbole to suggest history is watching. We're watching. Your children and grandchildren will read about this day and what we do. History is watching another assault on freedom. Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley, a social worker from Birmingham, Alabama. 14 months ago, she and her husband welcomed a baby girl thanks to the miracle of IVF. She scheduled treatments to have that second child, but the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state, unleashed by a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. She was told her dream would have to wait. What her family had got through should never have happened. Unless Congress acts, it could happen again. So tonight, let's stand up for families like hers. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep this waiting any longer. Guarantee the right to AVF. Guarantee it nationwide. Like most Americans, I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader, defending reproductive freedom, and so much more. Thank you. My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted. Joining us tonight is Kate Cox, the wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act. Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that. Clearly, those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024. If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again. Folks, America cannot go back. I'm here tonight to show what I believe is the way forward, because I know how far we come. 4 years ago next week, before I came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses. Remember the spikes in crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives, of loved ones, millions left behind. A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news, but in 1,000 cities and towns, the American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told. So let's tell the story here. Tell it here and now. America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot, and we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does. Folks, my inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years, a record, a record. Unemployment at 50-year lows. A record 16 million Americans are starting small businesses, and each one is a literal act of hope. With historic job growth and small business growth for Black and Hispanics and Asian Americans, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America and counting. Where is it written we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world? We are, we will. More people have health insurance today. More people have health insurance today than ever before. The racial wealth gap is as small as it's been in 20 years. Wages keep going up, inflation keeps coming down. Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world and tending lower. The landing is and will be soft. And now, instead of importing foreign products and exporting American jobs, We're exporting American products and creating American jobs right here in America, where they belong. And it takes time, but the American people are beginning to feel it. Consumer studies show consumer confidence is soaring. Buy America has been the law of the land since the 1930s. Past administrations, including my predecessor, including some Democrats as well in the past, failed to buy American. Not anymore. On my watch, federal projects that you fund, like helping build American roads, bridges, and highways, will be made with American products and built by American workers. Creating good-paying American jobs. And thanks to our CHIPS and Science Act, the United States is investing more in research and development than ever before. During the pandemic, a shortage of semiconductors, chips, that drove up the price of everything from cell phones to automobiles. And by the way, we invented those chips right here in America. Well, instead of having to import them, private companies are now investing billions of dollars to build new chip factories here in America, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Many of those jobs paying $100,000 a year and don't require a college degree. In fact, my policies have attracted $650 billion in private sector investment in clean energy, advanced manufacturing, creating tens of thousands of jobs here in America. And thanks to our bipartisan infrastructure law, 46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you strongly voted against it, or they're cheering on that money coming in. I like it. I'm with you. I'm with you. And if any of you don't want that money in your district, just let me know. Modernizing our roads and bridges, ports and airports, public transit systems. Removing poisonous lead pipes so every child can drink clean water without risk of brain damage. Providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where you live, urban, suburban, or rural communities, in red states and blue states. Record investments in tribal communities. Because of my investment in family farms, because I invested in family farms led by my Secretary of Agriculture, who knows more about this than anybody I know, we're better able to stay in the family for those farms and their children and grandchildren won't have to leave home to make a living. It's transformative. The great comeback story is Belvidere, Illinois, home to an auto plant for nearly 60 years. Before I came to office, the plant was on its way to shutting down. Thousands of workers feared for their livelihoods. Hope was fading. Then I was elected to office, and we raised the Belvidere repeatedly with auto companies, knowing unions would make all the difference. The UAW worked like hell to keep the plant open and get these jobs back, and together we succeeded. Instead of auto factories shutting down, auto factories reopening, and new state-of-the-art battery factories being built to power those cars there at the same. The folks of Belvidere, I say, instead of your town being left behind, your community is moving forward again. Because instead of watching auto jobs of the future go overseas, 4,000 union jobs with higher wages are building the future in Belvidere right here in America. Here tonight is UAW President Shawn Fain, a great friend and a great labor leader. Shawn, where are you? Stand up. And Dawn Sims, a third-generation worker, UAW worker at Belvedere. Sean, I was proud to be the first president to stand on the picket line, and today, Dawn has a good job in her hometown, providing stability for her family and pride and dignity as well. Showing once again, Wall Street didn't build America. They're not bad guys. They didn't build it, though. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class. I say to the American people, when America gets knocked down, we get back up. We keep going. That's America. That's you, the American people. It's because of you America's coming back. It's because of you our future is brighter. It's because of you that tonight we can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger. Tonight, I want to talk about the future of possibilities that we can build together. A future where the days of trickle-down economics are over and the wealthy and the biggest corporations no longer get all the tax breaks. And by the way, I understand corporations. I come from a state that has more corporations invested than every one of your states in the United States combined. And I represented it for 36 years. I'm not anti-corporation, but I grew up in a home where trickle-down economics didn't put much on my dad's kitchen table. That's why I determined to turn things around so middle class does well. When they do well, the poor go way up and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. And there's more to do to make sure you're feeling the benefits of all we're doing. Americans pay more for prescription drugs than anywhere in the world. It's wrong, and I'm ending it. With a law that I proposed and signed, not one of you Republican buddies voted for it. We finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month or thereabouts for insulin with diabetes, and it only costs $10 to make, they only get paid $35 a month now and still make a healthy profit. And I want to, but what to do next? I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for every American who needs it. Everyone. For years, people have talked about it, but finally we got it done and gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices on prescription drugs, just like the VA is able to do for veterans. That's not just saving seniors money, it's saving taxpayers money. We cut the federal deficit by $160 billion. Because Medicare will no longer have to pay those exorbitant prices to Big Pharma. This year, Medicare is negotiating lower prices for some of the costliest drugs on the market to treat everything from heart disease to arthritis. It's now time to go further and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for 500 different drugs over the next decade. We're making a lot of money, guys. And they'll still be extremely profitable. Will not only save lives, it will save taxpayers another $200 billion. Starting next year, the same law caps total prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year. Even for expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Now I want to cap prescription drug costs at $2,000 a year for everyone. Folks, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but if you want to get an Air Force One and fly to Toronto, Berlin, Moscow, even Moscow, probably. And bring your prescription with you, and I promise you I'll get it for you for 40% the cost you're paying now. Same company, same drug, same place. Folks, the Affordable Care Act, the old Obamacare, it's still a very big deal. Over 100 million of you can no longer be denied health insurance because of pre-existing condition. But my predecessor, and many in this chamber, want to take this prescription drug away by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let that happen. We stopped you 50 times before, and we'll stop you again. In fact, I'm not only protecting it, I'm expanding it. They enacted tax credits of $800 per person per year, reduce health care costs for millions of working families. That tax credit expires next year. I want to make that savings permanent. To state the obvious, women are more than half our population. But research on women's health has always been underfunded. That's why we're launching the first ever White House initiative on women's health research, led by Jill, doing an incredible job as First Lady. To pass my plan for $12 billion to transfer women's health research and benefit millions of lives all across America. I know the cost of housing is so important to you. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rates will come down as well, and the Fed acknowledges that. But I'm not waiting. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgages when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Just for 2 years. And my administration is also eliminating title insurance on federally backed mortgages. When you refinance your home, you can save $1,000 or more as a consequence. For millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws by price fixing and driving up rents. We've cut red tape so builders can get federally financing, which is already helping build a record 1.7 million new housing units nationwide. Now pass and build and renovate 2 million affordable homes and bring those rents down. To remain the strongest economy in the world, we need to have the best education system in the world. And I suspect all of you, want to give every child, a good start by providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. You know, I think I pointed out last year that children coming from broken homes where there's no books, they're not read to, not spoken to very often, start school, kindergarten, or first grade, having heard 1 million fewer words spoken. Well, studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school, go on to earn a 2- and 4-year degree, no matter what their background is. I met a year and a half ago with the leaders of the Business Roundtable. They were mad that they were angry. I think, well, they were discussing why I wanted to spend money on education. pointed out to them as vice president, I met with over I think it was 182 of those folks. Don't hold me to the exact number. And I asked them what they need most, the CEOs. And you've had the same experience on both sides of the aisle. They say a better educated workforce, right? So I looked at them and I say, I come from Delaware. DuPont used to be the 8th largest corporation in the world. And every new enterprise they bought, they educated the workforce to that enterprise. But none of you do that anymore. Why are you angry with me providing you the opportunity for the best educated workforce in the world? And they all looked at me and said, I think you're right. I want to expand high-quality tutoring and summer learning to see that every child learns to read by 3rd grade. I'm also connecting local businesses and high schools so students get hands-on experience and a path to a good-paying job, whether or not they go to college. And I want to make sure the college is more affordable. Let's continue increasing the Pell Grants to working and middle-class families and increase record investments in HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, including Hispanic institutions. When I was told I couldn't universally just change the way in which we dealt with student loans, I fixed 2 student loan programs that already existed to reduce the burden of student debt for nearly 4 million Americans, including nurses, firefighters, and others in public service. Like Keenan Jones, a public educator from Minnesota, who's here with us tonight. Keenan, where are you? Keenan, thank you. He's educated hundreds of students so they can go to college. Now he's able to help, after debt forgiveness, get his own daughter to college. And folks, look, such relief is good for the economy because folks are now able to buy a home, start a business, start a family. While we're at it, I want to give public school teachers a raise. And by the way, the first couple of years, we cut the deficit. Now, let me speak to the question of fundamental fairness for all Americans. I've been delivering real results in fiscally responsible ways. We've already cut the federal deficit. We've already cut the federal deficit over $1 trillion. I signed the bipartisan deal to cut another $1 trillion in the next decade. It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share. Look, I'm a capitalist. If you want to make or can make $1 million or millions of bucks, that's great. Just pay your fair share in taxes. A fair tax code is how we invest things to make this country great. Healthcare, education, defense, and so much more. But here's the deal. The last administration enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, overwhelmingly benefit the top 1%, the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, and exploded the federal deficit. They added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Check the numbers. Folks at home, does anybody really think the tax code is fair? No. Do you really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax break? No. I sure don't. I'm going to keep fighting like hell to make it fair. Under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody, not one penny. And they haven't yet. In fact, the child tax credit I passed during the pandemic cut taxes for millions of working families and cut child poverty in half. Restore that child tax credit. No child should go hungry in this country. The way to make the tax code fair is to make big corporations and the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Remember in 2020, 55 of the biggest companies in America made $40 billion and paid zero in federal income tax. Zero. Not anymore. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. But that's still less than working people pay in federal taxes. It's time to raise corporate minimum tax to at least 21%. So every big corporation finally begins to pay their fair share. I also want to end tax breaks for big pharma, big oil, private jets, massive executive pay when it's only supposed to be $1 million that could be deducted. They can pay them $20 million if they want, but deduct $1 million. End it now. You know, there are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%. That's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse. I propose a minimum tax for billionaires of 25%, just 25%. You know what that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. And imagine what that could do for America. Imagine a future with affordable child care. Millions of families can get they need to go to work to help grow the economy. Imagine a future with paid leave, because no one should have to choose between working and taking care of their sick family member. Imagine the future of home care and elder care, and people living with disabilities so they can stay in their homes and family caregivers can finally get the pay they deserve. Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security or Medicare or raise the retirement age, I will stop you. The working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh no, you guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was. Well, that's good to hear. You're not going to cut another $2 trillion for the super wealthy. That's good to hear. I'll protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share. Look, too many corporations raise prices to pad their profits, charging more and more for less and less. That's why we're cracking down on corporations that engage in price gouging and deceptive pricing, from food to health care to housing. In fact, the snack companies think you won't notice if they change the size of the bag and put a hell of a lot fewer, same size bag, put fewer chips in it. No, I'm not joking. It's called shrinkflation. Pass Bobby Casey's bill and stop this. I really mean it. You probably all saw that commercial on Snickers bars. You get charged the same amount, and you got about, 10% fewer Snickers in it. Look, I'm also getting rid of junk fees. Those hidden fees at the end of your bill that are there without your knowledge. My administration announced we're cutting credit card late fees from $32 to $8. Banks and credit card companies are allowed to charge what it costs them to instigate the collection. And that's more, a hell of a lot, like $8 and 30-some dollars. They don't like it. Credit card companies don't like it. But I'm saving American families $20 billion a year with all the junk fees I'm eliminating. Folks at home, that's why the banks are so mad. It's $20 billion in profit. I'm not stopping there. My administration has proposed rules to make cable, travel, utilities, and online ticket sellers tell you the total price up front so there are no surprises. It matters. It matters. And so does this. In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now. What are you against? 100 more high-tech drug detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop vehicles smuggling fentanyl into America. That's killing thousands of children. This bill would save lives and bring order to the border. It will also give me and any new president new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah. You're saying low. Look at the facts. I know you know how to read. I believe that given the opportunity for a majority in the House and Senate would endorse the bill as well, a majority right now. But unfortunately, politics has derailed this bill so far. I'm told my predecessor called members of Congress and the Senate to demand they block the bill. He feels political win, he viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him, it's not about me. I'd be a winner, not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks, I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now. And if my predecessors watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. We can do it together, but that's what here's what he will not do. I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country. I will not separate families. I will not ban people because of their faith. Unlike my predecessor on my first day in office, I introduced a comprehensive bill to fix our immigration system. Take a look at it. It has all these and more. Secure the border. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, and so much more. But unlike my predecessor, I know who we are as Americans. We're the only nation in the world with a heart and soul that draws from old and new. Home to Native Americans whose ancestors have been here for thousands of years. Home to people of from every place on earth. They came freely. Some came in chains. Some came when famine struck, like my ancestral family in Ireland. Some to flee persecution, to chase dreams that are impossible anywhere but here in America. That's America. And we all come from somewhere, but we're all Americans. Look, folks, we have a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border, or we can fix it. I'm ready to fix it. Send me the border bill now. A transformational moment in history happened 59 years ago today in Selma, Alabama. Hundreds of foot soldiers for justice marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to claim their fundamental right to vote. They were beaten, they were bloody, and left for dead. Our late friend and former colleague, John Lewis, was on that march. We miss him. But joining us tonight are other marchers, both in the gallery and on the floor, including Betty Mae Fikes, known as the voice of Selma. The daughter of gospel singers and preachers, she sang songs of prayer and protest on that bloody Sunday to help shake the nation's conscience. 5 months later, the Voting Rights Act passed and was signed into law. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But 59 years later, there are forces taking us back in time. Voter suppression, election subversion, unlimited dark money, extreme gerrymandering. John Lewis was a great friend to many of us here, but if you truly want to honor him and all the heroes who marched with him, then it's time to do more than talk. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And stop denying another core value of America, our diversity across American life. Banning books, it's wrong. Instead of erasing history, let's make history. I want to protect fundamental rights. Pass the Equality Act. And my message to transgender Americans, I have your back. Pass the PRO Act for workers' rights. Raise the federal minimum wage, because every worker has a right to a decent living, more than $7 an hour. We're also making history by confronting the climate crisis, not denying it. I don't think any of you think there's no longer a climate crisis. At least I hope you don't. I'm taking the most significant action ever on climate in the history of the world. I'm cutting our carbon emissions in half by 2030, creating tens of thousands of clean energy jobs, like the IBEW work is building and installing 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Conserving 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030. And taking action on environmental justice fence-line communities smothered by the legacy of pollution. And patterned after the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, I launched the Climate Corps to put 20,000 young people to work in the forefront of our clean energy future. I'll triple that number in a decade. To state the obvious, all Americans deserve the freedom to be safe, and America is safer today than when I took office. A year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up. The biggest increase in history. It was then, through my American Rescue Plan, which every American voted against, I might add, we made the largest investment in public safety ever. Last year, the murder rate saw the sharpest decrease in history. Violent crime fell to one of its lowest levels in more than 50 years. But we have more to do. We have to help cities invest in more community police officers, more mental health workers, more community violence intervention. Give communities the tool to crack down on gun crime, retail crime, and carjacking. Keep building trust, as I've been doing by taking executive action on police reform and calling for it to be the law of the land. Directing my cabinet to review the federal classification of marijuana and expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession, because no one should be jailed for simply using or have it on their record. Take on crimes of domestic violence. I'm ramping up the Federal Enforcement of the Violence Against Women Act that I proudly wrote when I was a senator, so we can finally end the scourge against women in America. There are other kinds of violence I want to stop. With us tonight is Jasmine, whose 9-year-old sister Jackie was murdered with 21 classmates and teachers in an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Very soon after that happened, Jill and I went to Uvalde for a couple of days. We spent hours and hours with each of the families. We heard their message, so everyone in this room, in this chamber, could hear the same message. The constant refrain, and I was there for hours meeting with every family. They said, do something. Do something. Well, I did do something by establishing the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, that the Vice President is leading the charge. Thank you for doing it. Meanwhile, my predecessor told the NRA he's proud he did nothing on guns when he was president. Oh. After another shooting in Iowa recently, he said, when asked what to do about it, he said, just get over it. There's his quote, just get over it. I say, stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm proud we beat the NRA when I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years because of this Congress. We now must beat the NRA again. I'm demanding a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Pass universal background checks. None of this. I taught the Second Amendment for 12 years. None of this violates the Second Amendment or vilifies responsible gun owners. You know, as we manage challenges at home, we're also managing crises abroad, including in the Middle East. I know the last 5 months have been gut-wrenching for so many people, for the Israeli people, for the Palestinian people, and so many here in America. This crisis began on October 7th with a massacre by a terrorist group called Hamas, as you all know. 1,200 innocent people, women and girls, men and boys, slaughtered after enduring sexual violence. The deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and 250 hostages taken. Here in this chamber tonight are families whose loved ones are still being held by Hamas. I pledge to all the families that we will not rest until we bring every one of your loved ones home. We also we will also work around the clock to bring home Evan and Paul, Americans being unjustly detained by the Russians and others around the world. Israel has the right to go after Hamas. Down arms could end it by releasing the hostages, laying down arms, and surrendering those responsible. But Israel has Israel has a added burden because Hamas hides and operates under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. Israel also has a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza. This war has taken a greater toll on innocent civilians than all previous wars in Gaza combined. 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of whom are not Hamas. Thousands and thousands of innocent women and children also orphaned. Nearly 2 million more Palestinians under bombardment or displacement. Homes destroyed, neighborhoods in rubble, cities in ruin, families without food, water, medicine. It's heartbreaking. I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released, to get the hostages home and ease the intolerable and humanitarian crisis and build toward an enduring, something more enduring. The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire. And they're announcing they're going to have a crossing in northern Gaza. To the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time. And I say this as a lifelong supporter of Israel. My entire career, no one has a stronger record with Israel than I do. I challenge any of you here. I'm the only American president to visit Israel in wartime. But there is no other path that guarantees Israel's security and democracy. There is no other path that guarantees Palestinians can live in peace with peace and dignity. And there's no other path that guarantees peace between Israel and all of its neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, with whom I'm talking. Creating stability in the Middle East also means containing the threat posed by Iran. That's why I built a coalition of more than a dozen countries to defend international shipping and freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. I've ordered strikes to degrade the Houthi capability and defend U.S. forces in the region. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and our military personnel. For years, I've heard many of my Republican and Democratic friends say that China is on the rise and America is falling behind. They've got it backwards. I've been saying it for over 4 years, even when I wasn't president. America's rising. We have the best economy in the world. And since I've come to office, our GDP is up, our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade. And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. I've revitalized our partnership and alliance in the Pacific. India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Pacific Islands. I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China, not allowing to trade them there. Frankly, for all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that. I want competition with China, not conflict. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well. Here at home, I've signed over 400 bipartisan bills. But there's more to pass my unity agenda. Strengthen penalties on fentanyl trafficking. You don't want to do that, huh? Pass bipartisan privacy legislation to protect our children online. Harness the promise of AI to protect us from peril. Ban AI voice impersonations and more. And keep our truly sacred obligation to train and equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. That's why the song Support and Help of Dennis and the VA, I signed the PACT Act. One of the most significant laws ever, helping millions of veterans exposed to toxins who now are battling more than 100 different cancers. Many of them don't come home, but we owe them and their families support. We owe it to ourselves to keep supporting our new health research agency called ARPA-H. And remind us that we can do big things, like end cancer as we know it, and we will. Let me close with this. Yay! I know you don't want to hear any more, Lindsay, but I got to say a few more things. I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. Between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy, a future based on core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me. I was born amid World War II, when America stood for the freedom of the world. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, among working-class people who built this country. I watched in horror as two of my heroes, like many of you did, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, were assassinated. And their legacies inspired me to pursue a career in service. I left the law firm and became a public defender because my city of Wilmington had the National Guard after Dr. King was assassinated because of the riots. And I became county councilman almost by accident. I got elected to the United States Senate when I had no intention of running at age 29. Then vice president, my first black president. now President, to the first women Vice President. In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke. And I've been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy. My fellow Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are, it's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future where the middle class finally has a fair shot and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, everybody, you were just listening to the State of the Union 2024 right there. We are awaiting their GOP response, obviously. But President Biden, speech very notable, some of the things he said. We're going to go over some of those key moments here in just a moment here. Please stand by here. Okay. Biden has wrapped up his last State of the Union address of his first term. thanks everyone for standing by for the State of the Union 2024. Let's talk about it all. Let's go from the beginning as, again, we are waiting for the Republican response. Be a little while here, but let's first go over some key moments in this speech. If you remember, just moments ago when President Biden was speaking on Gaza, the House was very unusually quiet, pretty silent. But I want to speak on something that may not is a little less important here. Give me just a second. Please pause here. A protester who was yelling, if you remember, I saw a shot of him getting kicked out, but he was yelling, quote, 2nd Battalion U.S. Marines. Biden, he did not acknowledge or even, look at that comment. He just kind of moved on. The man was kicked out. It was a protester just yelling, quote, 2nd Battalion U.S. Marines. I heard that, and I was trying to figure out exactly what that was about. Now, Biden did, his speech, his pronunciation wasn't as best as it may have been in the past, as in maybe he was a senator, maybe in 2020 when he was elected running that campaign. In the end, though, he ad-libbed a few things. I want to talk about those things he did ad-lib. He ad-libbed to Senator Lindsey Graham. If you remember, towards the end, he said, quote, let me close with this. And then to Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican from South Carolina, he said, quote, I know you don't want to hear any more, Lindsey, but I got a few more things. And then it was switched to a shot. I don't know if you guys saw it on stream, but there was a shot here of Lindsey Graham cracking up at the joke that he made. Now, that was something very key. Now, this speech did take, what was that, 8:30? Now it's 9:38, somewhere in there. About an hour speech here. And guys, I'm just kind of reading through some different things here as we watch President Biden make his way towards the exit here. But I'm just reading through some of these key moments here. Something else he also ad-libbed, and I was seeing if he did, was the shrinkflation part of his speech. He ad-libbed the Hershey's part, where he started to talk about the Hershey's chocolate, about how there was 10 less now for the same price. And Republicans laughed when he began talking about shrinkflation. So that was something that occurred. Republicans were laughing about that and laughing at that. When he started talking about shrinkflation, I don't know if there was a video from the Biden campaign talking on shrinkflation, as they like to call it, talking on some of those things here. And basically, if I'm correct here, what they basically had said was, I'm sorry guys, I'm just reading some different things and looking at everything, but basically, what he talked about was Oreos. Things costing the same amount as they are now. Things costing the same amount, but you still having to pay the same. Things costing more for less product. Sorry, I had to get that out there. Because again, I'm just... Excuse me. I would say that Biden did not mention the State of the Union for a while. Biden did not mention the Israel-Hamas war, to correct myself there, for a long time. It wasn't until about an hour in that he began finally mentioning anything about the Israel-Hamas war, which there were protesters outside the whole entire time of his speech. protesting for an immediate and permanent ceasefire there. All right, we just got in the top topics Biden spent the most time on. He spent 2 minutes on democracy, 4.7 minutes on the Israel and Gaza, or Israel-Hamas war. He spent 4.7 minutes on immigration, 4.5 minutes on economy, 4.4 minutes on taxes. Let me go over here to see. Here, let me see what other times he spent on some other things here. Give me just a second. He spent 3.3 minutes on abortion and 3.4 minutes on education. Now, if we go down to Russia and Ukraine, which he opened it, he opened the State of the Union address on that. He opened it on the invasion, as he called it there. So he talked on junk fees. That was something he was going to be right about. We'll kind of go through my notes here in just a minute. I'm kind of waiting here. We are awaiting again the okay. We are awaiting at this point. I'm going to keep kind of talking, going through some of the key moments here. The Republican address of the State of the Union by Katie Britt, who is the Republican senator from Alabama. Here, we're still watching President Biden there on your screen. I wonder if we can go to another screen here without it. I haven't seen Latin. That appears we're still going to see live. Let's go back over here. Apologies, everyone. Okay. I want to go to something about the border here, if we can. Stand by with me. Let's go to the border. Stand by with me. Okay, before we talk about that, really quickly, during the speech, if you remember, Trump was expected to give, quote, play-by-play, kind of this commentary thing on his Truth Social page of this. And due to everyone kind of jumping on and trying to see exactly what he was going to be saying, especially journalists and things of that nature, Truth Social was down during the time. I don't know if it's still down. Now, NBC News reports, quote, working just fine for us, end quote, is what Caroline Leavitt said about the platform, who is the Trump campaign spokesperson. Okay. Let's talk. Okay. Let's go on the immigration, the bill that was passed, and kind of people, it was a bill that Donald Trump basically told Republicans not to support. They didn't support the bill, and, things of that nature. Is an interesting thing that happened there, of the Republican frontrunner being able to control Congress. Okay, but here we have. Okay. So when he started talking about that bipartisan border bill, he criticized Republicans for blocking the Senate bipartisan border bill. And he basically said people who said no to that bill, were wrong. And the Republican frontrunners should be able to control things. I want to say this. A quote he said that doesn't directly relate to the border, but at the very beginning, he was speaking just before this on the Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, which we have to assume this is what that quote meant and who that quote was towards. And we really would have kind of limited our assuming here in news, but he said, quote, "You can't love your country only when you win." Now let's go back over here to the bipartisan border bill here. That was Biden. A little quote there from Biden, what he said on the what he said kind of on the at the beginning of the speech as he was making kind of comments on January 6th. Okay. Now, Senator James Lankford, the Republican from Oklahoma, said, quote, "That's true," as Biden details what is in the bipartisan border bill. We were waiting a while, if you remember, for him to mention the Israel-Hamas war. It really took a while for us to finally see that. And we are still, again, awaiting the Republican address from the Republican senator from Alabama, Katie Britt. And again, as we wait for that, we're going to keep bringing you kind of these highlights of this speech and what exactly happened there. Okay, reading a story here from NBC News that Republicans say speech was, quote, political, they felt yelled at. I'm going to read this kind of directly here. Republicans say this was a political and campaign speech. And if we can here, I want to go to this camera. You guys should maybe you'll be able to see me if you can. Okay, so and guys, I'm reading this story from NBC News here that, and I've kind of been going through some different resources here. I was just on NBC News, and this interesting story popped up here. So it says Republicans say speech was political. They felt yelled at here. Republicans leaving the chamber say this was a, quote, political and campaign speech, end quote, and that it was about as expected. Senator Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana, said Biden was, quote, yelling and mumbling simultaneously. Cassidy also said one House member next to him told him, quote, he had not been yelled at so much since his wife was so mad at him, end quote. Senator Chris Murphy, the Democrat from Connecticut, called the speech, quote, a home run. Now, quote, Mr. President, you brought the Irish fire tonight, end quote, said Representative Pat Ryan, the Democrat from New York. Wow, that was a lot in just a few sentences. I want to go back to something key. Republicans say they felt yelled at. And sorry, guys, I'm trying to think on what maybe we can bring up here that may relate to that. Let me think. I mean, feeling yelled at. I mean, you could say about, supporting Trump. There was definitely some things in that about in the State of the Union address about supporting Trump as. For instance, this quote right here that I was just reading off: "You can't love your country only when you've won." And I'm kind of just paraphrasing there because I said that wrong, but let's go on some of the different things he talked about, and I just want to kind of things I remember, key moments that I remember here. So again, we are awaiting the State of the Union GOP address of the State of the Union. So as we wait that. Stand by. Okay. All right, so here's what kind of occurred in this instant, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about here for just a minute. So in the beginning, he started talking about the, quote, invasion of by Russia of Ukraine, and then he led that about the 3-year anniversary here that is going to be coming up of the war, the Israel-Hamas war. And then we go now to, he made kind of this snarky comment on January 6th. He said, just like the January 6th, and I think he said the word insurrection on the Capitol. And that is when he said the quote, you can't love your country only when you win, end quote. I've said that 100 times over and over, it feels like already. Then he went to talk on reproductive freedom, and he said, the Biden administration will restore Roe versus Wade, which we'll have to see if they can follow that promise. But He talked on inflation and how it is going down. It is trickling down. He talked on exporting goods instead of kind of importing goods here. They're more of exporting goods made here. So we're giving goods away that are made here and making our own goods now. So that was something key to the speech, the address. He also talked on his policies leading to $650 billion in private sector. He boasted about the UAW, and I saw something earlier about some members of one of the UAW clapping when watching the State of the Union speech here. So, I mean, he talked about this UAW for 2-3 minutes. I mean, it was a while. He said, quote, "The state of our union is strong and getting stronger." That is one of the key quotes that I noted that he did say about the state of the union. Let's go back over here to Capitol Hill. You can see, is that Lauren Boebert? I can't tell. I can't tell if that's Lauren Boebert. I don't think that is. Maybe it's. I don't know. Everyone is trying to talk to Biden right now, though, after he delivered that speech. Okay. He says, quote, I'm sorry, I'm not quoting him here, but when America falls, we get back up. That was something he said. Also, something I did want to note in this case was how much that Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, simply just did not stand up. He would kind of shake his head yes, showing that he was in agreement of whatever the president may have said. But he would, and slowly kind of clap his hands kind of under the table. Because I was watching, I saw him maybe stand up or something twice, 3 times maybe. So that was really interesting for me. Let's move on to the next page. He did clarify that he's not anti-corporation and said that he came from Delaware, which is the place that does have a lot of corporations, and just said he believes that they need to be paying more in taxes. I want to go down to something he mentioned. He said, "It is time to raise the corporate tax to minimum 21%. He then went to kind of pharmaceuticals, medication, and things of that nature, talking about, insulin and things of that nature. He said he finally beat Big Pharma. He mentioned kind of this example here of medication being $400 and moving that down to like $25, I think is what it was. And he basically said, and they're still making a big profit off of that. Okay. He also went to housing tax credits for $800 to reduce, I'm sorry, that's not housing, but to reduce healthcare costs. He said that does expire and it will expire very soon. He says he wants to make that permanent. He then talked about renovating affordable homes and making that rent less money. So that was something key here. We are awaiting the Republican response, though, from Katie Britt, and it appears we do have that response in, if we can go to that very soon here. We are awaiting the Republican response. Everyone, please stand by with me here. We are going to get a feed of it. Okay. I'm trying my best right now, everyone. I'm trying my best to get you guys a feed of that. Let's go.
Are you still using Google?
Good, the bad, and the ugly of our days. It's where we laugh together, and it's where we hold each other's hands and pray for God's guidance. And many nights, to be honest, it's where Wesley and I worry. I know we're not alone. And so tonight, the American family needs to have a tough conversation, because the truth is, we're all worried about the future of our nation. The country we know and love seems to be slipping away, and it feels like the next generation will have fewer opportunities and less freedoms than we did. I worry my own children may not even get a shot at living their American dreams. My American dream allowed me, the daughter of two small business owners from rural Enterprise, Alabama, to be elected to the United States Senate at the age of 40. Growing up, sweeping the floor at my dad's hardware store and cleaning the bathroom at my mom's dance studio, I never could have imagined what my story would entail. To think about what the American dream can do across just one generation, in just one lifetime, it's truly breathtaking. But right now, the American dream has turned into a nightmare for so many families. The true, unvarnished state of our union begins and ends with this. Our families are hurting. Our country can do better. And you don't have to look any further than the crisis at our southern border to see it. President Biden inherited the most secure border of all time. But minutes after taking office, he suspended all deportations, he halted construction of the border wall, and he announced a plan to give amnesty to millions. We know that President Biden didn't just create this border crisis, he invited it with 94 executive actions in his first 100 days. When I took office, I took a different approach. I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12. She told me not just that she was raped every day, but how many times a day she was raped. The cartels put her on a mattress in a shoebox of a room, and they sent men through that door over and over again for hours and hours on end. We wouldn't be okay with this happening in a third world country. This is the United States of America, and it is past time, in my opinion, that we start acting like it. President Biden's border policies are a disgrace. This crisis is despicable. And the truth is, it is almost entirely preventable. From fentanyl poisonings to horrific murders, there are empty chairs tonight at kitchen tables just like this one because of President Biden's senseless border policies. Just think about Laken Riley. In my neighboring state of Georgia, this beautiful 22-year-old nursing student went out on a jog one morning, but she never got the opportunity to return home. She was brutally murdered by one of the millions of illegal border crossers President Biden chose to release into our homeland. Y'all, as a mom, I can't quit thinking about this. I mean, this could have been my daughter. This could have been yours. And tonight, President Biden finally said her name. He refused to take responsibility for his own actions. Mr. President, enough is enough. Innocent Americans are dying, and you only have yourself to blame. Fulfill your oath of office, reverse your policies, end this crisis, and stop the suffering. Sadly, We know that President Biden's failures don't stop there. His reckless spending dug our economy into a hole and sent the cost of living through the roof. We have the worst inflation in 40 years and the highest credit card debt in our nation's history. Let that sink in. Hardworking families are struggling to make ends meet today. And with soaring mortgage rates and sky-high childcare costs, they're also struggling to how to plan for tomorrow. The American people are scraping by, while President Biden proudly proclaims that Bidenomics is working. Goodness, y'all, bless his heart, we know better. I'll never forget stopping at a gas station in Chilton County one evening. The gentleman working the counter told me that after retiring, he had to pick up a job in his 70s so that he didn't have to choose between going hungry or going without his medication. He said, I did everything right. I did everything I was told to do. I worked hard, I saved, I was responsible. He's not alone. I hear similar concerns from fellow parents, whether I am walking with my friends or whether I'm at my kids' games. But let's be honest, it's been a minute since Joe Biden pumped gas, ran a carpool, or even pushed a grocery cart. Meanwhile, the rest of us see our dollar and we know it doesn't go as far. We see it every day. And despite what he tells you, our communities are not safer. For years, the left has coddled criminals and defunded the police, all while letting repeat offenders walk free. The result is tragic, but foreseeable. From our small towns to America's most iconic city streets, life is getting more and more dangerous. And unfortunately, President Biden's weakness isn't just hurting families here at home. He is making us a punchline on the world stage. Look, where I'm from, your word is your bond. But for 3 years, the president has demonstrated that America's word doesn't mean what it used to. From abandoning our allies in his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan to desperately pushing another dangerous deal with Iran, President Biden has failed. We've become a nation in retreat, and the enemies of freedom, they see an opportunity. Putin's brutal aggression in Europe has put our eyes on the brink. Iran's terrorist proxies have slaughtered Israeli, Jews, and American citizens. They've targeted commercial shipping, and they've attacked our troops nearly 200 times since October, killing 3 U.S. soldiers and 2 Navy SEALs. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party is undercutting America's workers. China is buying up our farmland, spying on our military installations, and spreading propaganda through the likes of TikTok. You see, the CCP knows that if it conquers the minds of our next generation, it conquers America. And what does President Biden do? Well, he bans TikTok for government employees, but creates an account for his own campaign. Y'all, you can't make this stuff up. Look, we all recall when presidents faced national security threats with strength and resolve. That seems like ancient history. Right now, our commander-in-chief is not in command. The free world deserves better than a dithering and diminished leader. America deserves leaders who recognize that secure borders, stable prices, safe streets, and a strong defense are actually the cornerstones of a great nation. Just ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 3 years ago? There's no doubt we're at a crossroads, and it doesn't have to be this way. We all feel it. But here's the good news. We, the people, are still in the driver's seat. We get to decide whether our future will grow brighter or whether we'll settle for an America in decline. Well, I know which choice our children deserve, and I know the choice the Republican Party is fighting for. We are the party of hard-working parents and families, and we want to give you and your children the opportunities to thrive. And we want families to grow. It's why we strongly support continued nationwide access to in vitro fertilization. We want to help loving moms and dads bring precious life into this world. Wesley and I believe there is no greater blessing in life than our children. And that's why tonight, I want to make a direct appeal to the parents out there, and in particular to my fellow moms, many of whom I know will be up tossing and turning at 2 a.m., wondering how you're going to be in 3 places at once and then somehow still get dinner on the table. First of all, we see you, we hear you, and we stand with you. I know you're frustrated. I know you're probably disgusted by most of what you see going on in Washington, and I'll be really honest with you, you're not wrong for feeling that way. Look, I get it. The task in front of us isn't an easy one, but I can promise you one thing. It is worth it. So I am asking you, for the sake of your kids and your grandkids, get into the arena. Every generation has been called to do hard things. American greatness rests in the fact that we always answer that call. It's who we are. Never forget, we are steeped in the blood of patriots who overthrew the most powerful empire in the world. We walk in the footsteps of pioneers who tamed the wild. We now carry forward the same flame of freedom as the liberators of an oppressed Europe. We continue to draw courage from those who bent the moral arc of the universe. And when we gaze upon the heavens, never forget that our DNA contains the same ingenuity that put man on the moon. America has been tested before, and every single time we've emerged unbowed and unbroken. Our history has been written with grit of men and women who got knocked down. But we know their stories because they did not stay down. We are here because they stood back up. So now it's our turn, our moment to stand up and prove ourselves worthy of protecting the American dream. Together, we can reawaken the heroic spirit of a great nation. Because America, we don't just have a rendezvous with destiny. We take destiny's hand and we lead it. Our future starts around kitchen tables, just like this, with moms and dads just like you. And you are why I believe with every fiber of my being that despite the current state of our union, our best days are still ahead. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless these United States of America.
You were just listening to Senator, Senator, if I can get this out here, the senator from Alabama, Katie Britt, Republican speech. GOP response to the State of the Union. I should clarify there. It was an interesting speech. It was very dramatic, but not in a bad way. It was dramatic in a way that was, it felt as if she was trying to get to Americans' hearts. She was trying to get the realization of Americans of where she thought maybe we stood today. The economy and things of that nature. So this is something very interesting here that we are going to continue to follow. And it's been a great one covering all of the State of the Union. There are so many more highlights. Still deciding if I want to have a video coming up for you guys soon, but there's a lot going on in the world, and this is just going to have to be where our coverage wraps up. It has been a great 2 hours and 12 minutes to be with you guys of the State of the Union. If you ever want to find any information, you can visit our website at brooklynnews.wordpress.com or scan the QR code here in the top left-hand corner of your screen. It's usually up for most of the time. Sometimes I'll take it down momentarily. But that wraps up our coverage of the State of the Union 2024. I'm Jackson Mitchell, and it has been great following and covering this for the last 2 hours and 12 minutes, and a speech given by President Biden and a GOP response given by Senator from Alabama, Katie Britt.